Cool, cool. We are back for another night of the Heal Me campaign, Brotherly Conversations. Dana, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How about you, brother?
Super blessed. Cool, cool. We are back for another night of the Heal Me campaign, Brotherly Conversations. Dana, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good,
Doing
man. I'm
good.
doing
Doing
good. How about you?
good.
Memorial Day
Super
weekend.
blessed. Cool, cool. We are back for another night of the Heal Me campaign, Brotherly Conversations. Never did this before. Dana, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good,
Doing
man. I'm
good.
doing good.
Doing
How about you?
good.
Memorial Day
Super
weekend.
blessed. Cool, cool. We are back for another night of the Heal Me campaign, Brotherly Conversations.
I hear some reverb on that.
Because um, it's playing back for some reason. And I don't know why it's playing back. So hold on. For those who are tapped in on our Facebooks, give us one quick second. Technical difficulty. Through the technical difficulties. All right, let's see. It should work this time. All right, yeah, it did something weird. I'm trying to see if I corrected it.
Mhm.
All right, there we go. I think it's corrected.
All right, we good. We good. We in here.
Problem solvers, man. We get it done. We get it rocking.
Absolutely.
So now that we got it live on IG, I'm just gonna give some time for our IG people to get in here. I'm also gonna go in and share it to some folks just so they know we tapped in.
Sure.
Since we started over too, man, just I ask you again, man, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing good, man. Had some time to rest this weekend. So that was always good. Always need that rest, you know what I mean?
Right, right.
We be working hard out here trying to provide for the families and, make sure our businesses is straight. So yeah, need that rest.
Got to,
Yeah.
got
How
to.
about, how
I
about
didn't
you?
get, I didn't get as much rest as I should have got. If I should have gotten.
Mhm.
But my weekend was filled with love, bro. Love and good energy, family vibe, brotherhood.
Mhm.
It was just filled with goodness, man. So
Yeah, that's what's up, man.
it's what I needed for sure.
Yeah, it's like a recharge, right?
Right, right, absolutely.
For sure.
I'm actually nearing the end of the Heal Me campaign for this month. Right, I got a couple more days,
Hmm.
and it's been a good month.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of good feedback.
Yeah, it's been a good month.
Yeah.
You being a licensed therapist, I'm sure you've seen both the we've seen the benefits of being able to have similar conversations.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
And
absolutely. Just having these open and honest conversations, because I work primarily with men, so having these open and honest conversations is freeing for men because a lot of times, some of the men I work with, they feel as though they don't have like safe outlets that really understand them. So like coming into like a safe space like therapy, we have those conversations and they feel, secure enough to be vulnerable in those moments. So
yeah, I mean, when I first started this, I wasn't I wasn't approaching it from that perspective, right? I'm still not really approaching it from that perspective. Really approaching it from the perspective like let's talk about some stuff,
mhm.
live so that people can catch it. You know what I mean? So people can benefit from it. Which is why I always tell folks, most people are gonna say, "Yo, it's a safe space."
Mhm.
Nah, it's the internet.
Right. Everybody's open to having access to you to an extent.
Yeah, say whatever you feel safe to say, whatever you know you need not say. You know, and that's
Right.
to your own discretion. I'm safe. It's a safe space here,
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel that energy. You know what
but
I
ain't no safe space here.
mean? Right.
Yeah,
We can't control what's out there. You know what I'm saying?
right.
So
So let's tap in. Once again, y'all, this is the Heal Me campaign, brotherly conversations, where for the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, I speak with African American men about challenges and difficulties that they faced in life and how they came through them to return to a place of peace, power, and purpose. I did this because in 2019, I wrote a song entitled Heal Me featuring Grammy nominated artist Raheem Devon, which essentially talks about it's a story about my father and how he raised me and how he inadvertently taught me some very unhealthy practices for coping with pain and adversity. And so our goal tonight is through this conversation that that we help one somebody who's currently going through a more difficult period in their life, that we want to let them know that they're not alone, right? You're not facing this um, alone, right? Other people have dealt with really difficult things, and then two, that they would see that they can come through it, like you can make it on the other side. And then the goal is that they'll learn from us maybe some strategies that they can employ to get back to a place of peace, power, and purpose within themselves. Our guest tonight is is a brother Dana who goes by Urban Counselor. I want you, Dana, just go ahead and tell us who you are, what you got going on, how we can, rock with you, support you, follow you, love up on you. Let us know.
for sure. Again, my name is Dana Lewis, also known as the Urban Counselor on IG. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a therapist. I'm the proud owner of a mental health group practice here in Baltimore, Maryland, called Whole Life Center, where we help cycle breakers break generational curses and move into generational healing. And again, you can follow me on IG, Urban underscore counselor. And on my Facebook page is Dana Lewis. So tap in with me and follow what I got going on.
I love the pitch too. We help cycle breakers,
Yes,
right? You know
sir.
exactly who the target market is and how to speak to them. Super dope. Thank you, brother, for tapping in with us today. For those who are here, I'm Yusha Sai, recording artist, motivational speaker, and master certified life coach. And we're gonna get the Heal Me campaign running. So I want to break down really quickly for you, Dana, how the night is gonna be set up.
Cool.
So we always start with an icebreaker. You know, the icebreaker is the Heal Me song. So we'll listen to it here on live.
Mhm.
And then you won't necessarily give me a review of the song. What I'm looking for is just a connection. You know what I mean? Maybe something you heard in a song that you connect to and how the story relates to you.
Okay.
After that, we'll get directly into your story. I use this language specifically, what broke you. Um, but that may not be fitting for you, right? That might not be that language may not be a direct connect for you. And so we can also just ask, like, what was a difficult time or what was a difficult exchange in your life that you've had. But I use that word broke because for the Heal Me campaign, the purpose is to identify our Job moment,
Mhm.
and how we overcame that particular difficult space. After that, right after we talk about that difficult time for you, we'll get into like vices, whether healthy or unhealthy things that you took on to cope. We'll go into your transition, what allowed you to move into a space and start healing. Um, then we'll move into some practices that you put in place to heal, and
Mhm.
then we'll talk about how you maintain on a daily basis, like what's your normal regimen. And then we finish with peace, power, and purpose. Do you have any questions?
Nope. Pretty clear.
Cool. All right. So for those who are tapping in, we're gonna get our icebreaker going. Heal Me, featuring myself and the brother Raheem Devon. Yeah. Heal me. This is my prayer. You see, my father never talked too much. Just that look in his eyes, deep stares out the window, told me that life was simple. But I would never know what he would never reveal. That sharp look in his face was pain he would conceal. He inadvertently taught me that real men don't feel. So don't follow your heart. Use it to advance your cause, but always follow your thoughts and make a smart decision. You should barely apologize and never ask permission. And when the world does a thing to try to break you down, don't tell a soul. They waiting just to take your crown. Your woman gon' think you weak if you express your pain. Your men gon' say you sweet, though they be feeling the same. So get a vice now. Cup of Hennessy, cigarette, live your life. Whatever you gotta do to get sleep at night. Cause for the longest, you probably ain't sleeping right. or even slept at all. When God calls, don't fight it, take a sigh of relief. That you ain't gotta live no more in this grief. Yeah, yeah, the cruel world that we living in is hard and cold. You ain't a man till it scars your soul. Straight up, so don't ever express your feelings. Sit in silence, cause the only feelings you get are anger, hate, and violence. But see, the system got a process and a plan for that. Time is the only thing you got, so never hand them that. So if you ever truly feel like you about to break, get you a pencil and a notebook, let your mind escape. Writing is the only place where we can feel free. After he died, I read his notebook, he wrote, Heal me. Heal me, yeah. Heal me. Father, don't nobody understand me. I won't make it out unless you come down and heal me. Yeah, yeah. Heal me. They don't know the pain I've been going through. I call on your name cause I know that you can heal me. Was he really that strong? Or just putting up a front? Did death come too soon? Or was it something he won? After 66 hard years of hiding them tears, did he get a reward? Well, let me make this clear that I think his vice got him. The thing he used to cope with life just took the life out of him. Them cigarettes that he would smoke on all them stressful days. But we still had a few good days, and I knew, cause he would smoke one or two, but otherwise a pack. I used to ask him not to smoke again, but what I should have said was breathe, pop, don't hold it in. We do yoga to get peace these days, but them Carolina preachers didn't teach these ways. It was suffer and survive. If you don't get your blessings in this life, if you tired, you can get them when you die. He used to hit that cigarette and play too much. That he got cancer and ain't say too much. He said, heal me. Oh, heal me. Yeah, tap in for us real quick, man. Heal me, right? Myself featuring Raheem Devon.
Mm-hmm.
That story. How do you relate to it?
Wow. So like the opening lines, man, like where he was talking about men in particular not expressing their emotions, right? So I remember like a couple years ago when I confronted my own father, right, about why wasn't he not there for me emotionally when I needed him the most. And we had like a very, very pretty intense conversation. And in
Mhm.
that conversation, he disclosed that he wasn't there for me emotionally because he didn't know how to be emotionally connected to me. And I was asking him in that moment, like, how come you didn't know how to be emotionally connected to me? I'm your son, right? I was having these questions. I was angry. And then he told me, like, his grandfather treated him the same way, like, not emotional, never connecting with him. Always told him like to be a hard worker, don't show no emotions, but let your work speak for itself. And you don't got time to be feeling certain emotions with yourself or with other people. So when he was just talking about that in the beginning parts of the song about, men being not comfortable with expressing emotions based upon like narratives from the past, that really touched me and it reminded me of, my conversation with my father
Mhm.
about like 5 years ago.
Dope. Man, thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's been passed down.
Yeah.
It's been passed down. I tell people all the time, I feel like it comes from slavery for real.
Hmm.
Because the way to survive for a man was to be quiet, be strong, work hard, play dumb.
Yep. Yep. It
Right.
don't crack under those harsh conditions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, bro. Let's dive right in. Right. The question is, what broke you? Do you resonate? Do you feel like you resonate? Like you have a moment?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For me, what broke me, to be honest with everybody that's watching, is my father, man, not really being in my life the way that I needed him to be in my life. Like my mom was there. I grew up in a single parent household, but I really was looking for my father to put me on game on what it means to be a man. And my mother was trying her best to teach me what it was to be a man, but she couldn't teach me that because she a woman, right? So she was teaching me some of her qualities, but what really broke me was like again, I was looking for my father and he wasn't nowhere to be found. Like he would pop in every now and again, but when I needed him to teach me about how to date women or how to shave and just those manly conversations, I just wish that I had, and it really broke me as far as like how I saw myself as a man, some of the decisions I was making as a man. and I would be having like anger because I'm like, man, like why can't my father just be here for me? Why can't we go out and hang out like I see other kids with their fathers at the time hanging out and doing certain things. And at one point in time, I was really going through like identity crisis because I'm like, how do I be a man?
Dana,
But
I want to push something real quick
yeah,
because I don't know if you see me when I made that face, and I made that face because I was going to ask you when was your father. Was there ever a point when your father was in your life, right? But the reason why I was going to ask you that because I wanted to lead to the idea of like thinking around when at what age did you realize that
mhm,
the relationship that you had, that the absent relationship that you had with your father wasn't normal?
14, those teenage years.
And what brought upon that discovery where you was like, man, this ain't what it's supposed to be?
What brought on that discovery around age 14 is when, I was trying to, reach out to him at the time around like how to interact with women, with girls in high school. And I couldn't even get a conversation with him. I noticed he was very avoidant. He wasn't really there to really have those conversations as I was going through puberty.
Mm.
So then I saw from there, like I really couldn't get like an intimate touch with him. Where prior to me being 14, he would come around, drop off gifts, toys, and things of that nature. But really, when I started changing, my body started changing. I started seeing the world from a teenage point of view. I needed him in those times. And I saw right there when he wasn't able to really put me on game on certain things and wasn't making himself available. That's when I was like, okay, we not as close as what I thought prior to, when I was getting all the toys, the games, and all these gifts. But when I really needed to have like that father to son kind of link up, it wasn't present at that time of, 14 up until like 18. And then around like 21 years old is when we started kind of getting in closer. But that 14 to 17 was major.
Mm. Yeah, because you mentioned earlier, it was like, man, I was seeing the other kids with their fathers,
Yeah.
and it just kind of gave me this perspective, like, um, for kids, right? Whatever we see is normal
Hmm.
until we see something that tells us that what we have is different. So we, like
Hmm.
you were seeing the other kids with their fathers. I was wondering, um, was it those moments that made you look at your scenario with your father like, I ain't got that?
Yeah. Yeah. But I was like at that age though, like when I was a kid, I would notice it, but of course I couldn't wrap my head around like that connection of, oh, my father's not really connected.
Mm,
But when I was like I said, 14, that's when the light bulb went off. Like, I wanted to ask him a question about a particular female at the time, and I couldn't get a hold of him. He wasn't making himself available. So that's when I knew from right there, like the relationship was different.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you're reaching out to your father. You're trying to have a more in depth relationship with him,
Yeah.
um, just because you want some advice, like you said, you want him to put you on game.
Yeah.
He's not being responsive,
Right.
at least not in the way in which you desire to see him respond.
Exactly.
And you said you start lashing out. You start, anger.
Anger.
What other coping mechanisms were you using to like deal with that, or like how was it showing up in you? What other ways was it showing up in you?
Low self esteem. Not being confident. Always kind of like hiding in the shadows, not really exerting myself at that time as a young man.
Mm,
And then like what I used at the time to cope was really hip hop at the time. I was listening to a lot of Jay, a lot of Nas, Most Def, Talib Kweli, Common, the Roots, those type of artists that had intellect in their rhymes. And
mm,
as I was listening to, the music at the time, those lyrics really raised me as a young man. Put me on to certain things that go on in the street, put me on to certain things that go on with, women and just being a black man in America. Just listening to those songs then, those were like my coping mechanisms because I remember vividly, like I used to be in my mother's room and I would watch Monday Night Raw wrestling, and then had my Black Star CD in my Walkman joint, listening to that and just listening to Talib and Most, just putting
Brown
those,
skin lady.
yeah, brown
I
skin,
went.
and then like Respiration, songs like that just was like songs that just massaged my mental. It just gave me like encouragement at the time.
But I would like to say, well, I'm glad you had the balance in your listening experience, right? Because you go from brown skin lady to girls, 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 girls. I do it,
Yeah,
and I say that because even when you just talked about hip hop was one of your coping mechanisms, listening to
sure.
music, I thought about how many of us, especially born in the '80s, how many of us were raised by music and TV,
Hmm.
and depending on what show or what song you were listening to, you may have got some good tutelage,
For real.
but you may also got some very some toxic learning. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Um, music became your outlet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially hip hop, and just listening to at the time, like I'm saying, like Common and those guys, and even listening to like Boot Camp Click and things like that. Listening to those artists really just put me on to what it meant to be like a black man and how to navigate certain scenarios, you know, being black. You know what I mean?
Mm. You spoke about confidence.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna say this. It almost appears to me like an oxymoron in a sense, right? Because your coping mechanisms became one of your coping mechanisms was hip hop, how you listen to music, but hip hop is braggadocious.
For sure.
Hip hop is all about this, that, and the third. So it sounds like hip hop was enough to mellow your energy, but
Hmm.
wasn't enough to replace the confidence that
Hmm.
to replace what you would need from your father. Let's talk about this confidence thing then, because right, if I can't get it through hip hop, if hip hop isn't quite enough,
Right.
I think there's a powerful thing here, right?
Hmm.
What is the thing that I'm missing from my father that would have allowed me to believe in myself?
Hmm. Hmm. Pretty much like if I was getting like affirmed from him, like I see you, like son, I see you doing your thing. I believe in you. Really just there to affirm me and not me having to look for like different outlets to get affirmed. And I really believe like if I was hearing that from him at that time, I feel like things at that time, up until a point where when we'll talk more about this, up until the point where I went on my own self discovery journey, I feel like things would have changed if I would have just heard like, "I'm proud of you, son," or like, "I see you," or like really like brought me around his people and he was proud for me to be around him. Like I wish I had those moments. I feel like that would have gave me the confidence that I needed at that time to like really like be confident and say like, yo, my father see me and I want to make him proud and I feel good because I know that my father's gonna hold me up and celebrate me. You know what I'm saying?
Now, when addressing your father, I'm assuming that your father was raised by his grandfather, right?
Yeah, he was raised by his grandfather and his grandmother. I
Okay,
mean, and his mother and his father. Sorry.
okay.
Hmm.
Because right, it sounds like your father wasn't necessarily as present. Because well, what was his presence like? Because I know you would talk about like he was around, he would bring toys and all this. It was just like this emotional disconnect. But what was his physical presence like? Was he around?
He was around, but it wasn't emotionally connected.
Okay, okay,
Like
gotcha,
he
gotcha.
wouldn't really get into who I was. Like, how are you? Like, what's some things that is troubling you? Like, what's some things that you are thinking about as far as your future? Like really getting in depth with those type of conversations. Now, I can say that my father has looked out for me when it comes to like my career, like getting into social work and things like that. So again, like gifts and really being able to provide on that level. But as far as like really getting into who I was and my thoughts and really tapping in with me on that level. We didn't really have that um, type of connect.
Do you do you subscribe to the love languages?
Absolutely. Five love languages. Yes, sir.
Yeah. What do you think your father's love language is?
He acts of service. Like
So he could he could
he
be
loves
quiet
to
all day.
say it again.
So he could just be quiet all day as long as he could do stuff.
Right. And that does bring him joy. Like even to this day, like he loves providing, like for people, myself, like he loves giving. But other than that, he can be in the cut, not really speak much, but when it comes to acts of service and giving to people, that's him all day.
Gotcha. I'm glad y'all had that talk. We're gonna get to it though. So you're in this space, 14 to 18. Then you talk about how resurface at 21. How do you start to transition? Like, what happens to you where you be like, where you say to yourself like, I'm not 100, but I want to be.
Mhm, mhm.
How does that happen for you?
Yeah. That's a good question. So like I was saying, like when I got to 21 years old, I really was like in this phase where I was really caught in a comparison trap. I started comparing myself to other men. I
Mm,
started comparing myself to other young men I was around, and I was like, why can't I show the type of confidence that they had at the time?
mm,
What's up with me? So I started really having these questions about what is it about me that's not showing up the way that I want to show up. So then at that point, around 21, I was like, really like and to be honest with you guys, like I was in a state of like depression for real.
mm,
Because I was just like, man, like I'm a good dude. I got good grades. I graduated college. I had a pretty good state job at the time. And I'm like, why isn't it not clicking with me, connecting with other people, and me seeing myself in the way that I need to see myself as a confident black man at the time? So going through that period, I was like, something has to change. But I said that, but I was afraid to do it.
mm,
So 21 up until like 28, I was running away from myself.
mm.
I was running. I
What
was
what what does that look like? What does it look like to run away from yourself?
to run away from yourself,
Yeah, what were
not
you doing?
not acknowledging my feelings, buying stupid stuff, clothes that I didn't even need, overspending on music at the time, just finding other ways to cope that I thought would just heal those type of wounds. I was isolating myself from people. I
Mm.
didn't let people get in with me, like get vulnerable with me. I was just blocking the world out for real and just running away from those hard feelings. And even when my mom would want to talk to me at the time, I wasn't letting her in. I would just say, I'm good, mom, I'm good. But she said after looking back, she knew something was up with me.
So
She knew I was
you became your father.
pretty much, pretty much like withholding emotion, working. Because at the time I was working two jobs, working the state job and at the hospital, and I felt like okay, I'm working, I'm getting money, life is good, but really, it wasn't because I still was not confident. I still was hurt, man, and not taking care of my issues at the time.
Mm. I hear you, bro.
Yeah. This my first time really sharing my story this openly. So I thank you for holding this space for me.
For sure. Gotcha. I heard you. I see you. And we thank you for sharing in this space.
Yeah,
Um, there's something there. It was like you was running from yourself.
I was running.
The the dichotomy is that you're running from you, but you're running to him.
Mm, mhm.
by becoming a man who was structured tough, at least on the outside, not allowing yourself to process emotions,
Yeah.
overworking, was there a connection for you? Was there a desire for you that living like that would have made you more acceptable to your father? Was that ever a thought?
Not really. That wasn't never a thought, that working and things like that would make me be more desirable to my dad. Um, but at the time, like just overworking and things like that, again, like I just didn't know how to really effectively cope and really deal with those issues. But still, even though I was overworking and buying stupid stuff at the time, I always would say in my heart, like, yo, I just wish my father was around in that emotional way, um, so that I could share with him what was going on in my life. I could share with him this conversation that I wanted to have with him about why wasn't you there emotionally. And I would see him from that time period and I would clam up. I would clam up, not have the conversation. And because I thought like it would cause a lot of chaos, I thought it would cause a lot of confusion. But in my heart, I knew to have the conversation, but it didn't translate into action at the time. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. So
I'm,
your transition come. Go ahead.
no, good. Good.
So your transition comes because essentially you're like, you're in this state of almost depression. You're recognizing that you're doing all of these things to run and cope.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you said it and maybe I missed it. So reiterate it for me if you can. Was there a moment? Because here's the thing: you coping, you shopping, you buying crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in letting people in. You're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable.
Facts.
But I would like to say this: like this is new. I don't know how long ago this was for you, but this is new. These terms are new age language in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
and your ability to break down what you were doing is, to me, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong. This is hindsight for you. Like you can look back and be like, these are the things I was doing.
Right.
At what moment for you at that time? At what moment for you did something click for you, or you were just like, where you recognized that the things that you were doing, like when was that moment when you recognized what you were doing and recognized that it wasn't healthy for you?
Yeah. So the moment that it clicked for me, and I tell this to those I'm close to, it was like 2018 to be exact,
Hmm.
when I was like in a real deep state of depression. Um, and I had my son around that time. My son was born in 2017, but 2018 when I had my son, and I started noticing that I wasn't really being connected to him because of my feelings, and I wasn't being connected to myself. So around that time, it got to a boiling point. It hit its peak where I was just not tapped in with him, not tapped in with myself. I was losing focus on my purpose. I was losing focus on my goals. I was just existing but not living. I
Hmm.
was just here. I felt like a blob. And then at that moment, I was just like, something has to change. Something has to change. And I decided in 2018 to go on my own personal self discovery journey.
Hmm.
And that's when, like, from 2018 to 2019, I cut off social media and I started like cutting out distractions. And then I started really getting into my Bible. I started really reading my word and really spending my time with myself. It started really journaling and asking myself these questions about who am I? What makes me great? What is my purpose? What are the emotions that at the time I was running away from? So I started really diving into that. But that year, that 2018 year, was the year where it clicked for me. Like, I'm a shell of myself. I'm just existing, but I'm not living.
You talked about, and thank you for that. You talked about not being able to tap in with yourself, not being able to tap in with your son.
Hmm.
Was it that energy with your son that really pushed that too? And I asked that because I know to write that song "Heal Me,"
Yeah.
I had spent maybe 2 or 3 years talking about I don't have feelings.
Hmm.
But music is a emotional and spiritual journey.
Facts.
So when I went in to write that new album, I couldn't write music because I couldn't tap into my feelings
Mm-hmm.
because I ain't had none. So to even write that album, I had to tap back into my feelings.
Yeah.
And I had to go to the last place where I remember letting myself truly feel.
Hmm.
And that was when my father passed.
Hmm.
And I didn't even process it all the way then. So I literally had to go back and remember the day my father passed and remember the moment when my father passed. And I had to have a conversation with him about our functionality. And so what I asked you is because relating to that, right? Um, I can imagine you being in this space and then you're looking at your son and you're like, yeah, something don't feel right.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because to be honest with you guys, like when I found out that my wife was having a son, I got nervous, man.
Mm,
I was I was nervous because I ain't really had that example. So I was nervous. I'm like questioning myself before he even born. Like, what am I going to show him? How I'm going to respond to him? You know, am I going to have my emotions in check? All of these questions were just like coming up for me. And then when he was born, I was just like, more anxiety came upon me because I'm like, man, like he here now.
mm,
I really gotta be a father. Like I really gotta show up. Even at that stage, I still have to show my presence. I still have to handle myself as a father to him. And I really had to like think like, okay, I can't let this hinder me, but I gotta figure out some way to show up for him in his life and be that father to him. And at that time, I was really like thinking like, okay, what do I need to do to show up as his father? So at that time, I started reading like certain books about fatherhood. But as I was reading the books, it didn't really click because, as you know, you can read a textbook and it's all good, but those life experiences mean the most,
right.
help to shape you. And then I started again getting into this mode of sadness, like, dang, like I wish I had those talks with my father, or even having talks with my father then about what my son was doing, and, like how to manage him even at that time. And I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel vulnerable with him to even open up about that. And that made me sad too. That made me like really down because I really wanted to have even those conversations about fatherhood and what was it like for you being a first time father, but we never really had those conversations then. So
Yeah. So you go into the space where like, all right, cool, I want to do something about it. And you like, I went on my own self-care journey.
pretty much.
All right. Um, and I like your process, right? I listened to your process of what you said you were starting to do. And I like your process. Out of that time, right? Out of that time that you spent really just tapping into you, getting to know you, learning how to love you.
Mhm.
What would you say out of all the things you were doing, what was the thing that was like your go to? You was like, if you had a tight day and you couldn't get it all done, what was the one thing that you would make sure you got done?
One thing at that time when I was going on my self discovery journey that I made sure I got done was me writing in my journal and
Mm,
answering those self discovery questions. So it was a book. I still have it here in my office. It's called Self Discovery Journal for Men, 151 thought provoking questions. And that was the book that really started my journaling experience. So every night after I finished work, talk with the wife, connected with son at the time, always made sure I journal and answered those questions. Now, answering those questions, they were tough because it was really forcing me, in a sense, in a good way, to
yeah.
pull out some of these emotions, pull out some of these thoughts. pull out some of the feelings that I was looking to suppress at that time about my manhood. It really pushed me to answer those questions. And as I was writing in the journal at the time, I was nervous then because I didn't know like what would come out. But then as I was writing it and putting it on the paper and seeing those feelings, it actually started to become like cathartic. It started becoming relaxing. But initially, like those first 6 journal entries was tough for me because I'm like, I really gotta face myself. Like I really gotta do some conscious observing and really do like what they call shadow work and really acknowledge some of the stuff that I had hid in my unconscious and bring it to the conscious and really answer these questions and really dive into some of the things I've been holding on for so long. But after I got through those first 5, it started becoming pretty comfortable at that point.
And were you already in your practice as a therapist?
No, nope, nope.
Is there a correlation?
Say it again.
Is there a correlation between why you decided to start doing therapy?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. That's a whole nother story, but no direct correlation.
Okay. So what time period was this for you when you were doing this self discovery journey?
2018 to 19.
Okay. So 2018 to 19, you come out of 19 and describe the difference between you after your discovery versus you. Like give us some contrast.
So coming out of that self discovery journey, I was more confident about my identity, how I showed up around like certain groups of people, how I showed up in my home was different. I was leading from the front and not in the back. I started becoming, more vocal and more direct. When I communicated with people, I started looking people in the eye even more. I stopped stuttering because I had a stuttering problem.
Mm.
Started speaking more clearly. I was able to identify my own style as far as fashion, and I was just being unapologetically me. And I was being free. I wasn't like concerned about other people's opinions at the time. And I just was really in a good space where this is the Dana that I wanted to see. This is the Dana that I always wanted to walk in and day out. So those were some of the things that changed once I came out of that self discovery journey from 2018 to 2019. And I started laughing more, man, because prior to that, I wasn't like laughing. I really wasn't happy. But around this time after the self discovery journey, I really started to become more happy because I was happy within. I
Gotcha.
wasn't looking for external validation. I wasn't looking for other things to make me feel happy or feel good about myself.
Sound like you had some real joy.
Yeah, it was real.
Sound like you stopped mean mugging in pictures and started smiling.
Like the smile you see today came from that self discovery journey.
I'm glad you got it. I still mean mugging pictures.
So
Uh,
for
jokes, but so this was 2019. When did you said you approached you had to talk to your father? Was this recent?
this was about 2019. Yeah, this was 2019, like November to be
Uh,
exact.
so was that towards the end of your process?
Yeah, this was me like coming out of the process, right? So I started the self discovery journey February 2018, and I took that whole year. So from February to February, so late 2019 in November, I had this honest conversation with him, and at
Mm.
the time we were working together at a substance abuse treatment center, and something happened because we were supposed to go in business together to open up a clinic, and something happened where he didn't communicate with me about something. So I approached him and we had the conversation, but then the conversation bled into like what I said earlier about why weren't you there for me emotionally, right? So we in my office at the job we worked at together, and I'm asking him that question, like what was the disconnect with you connecting with me emotionally? And it took a lot of courage for me to ask that question. But at that time, coming out of my self discovery journey and doing that work, I was confident in speaking my truth and being direct. So I asked him, and he started crying. He started really like showing emotion. Um, and I felt his genuineness in his responses. And he was just like, Dane, I'm sorry, man. Like, I'm really am sorry for, not being there emotionally for you. And I wish I could have done better. And then he was mentioning that, his father didn't show him the ropes. His father was hard on him. And he was basically saying to me at that time, like, that was never his intention to not be there for me emotionally. He just didn't know how. And at that time, like when we was having a conversation, like to be honest with y'all, man, like I was getting misty eyed, man. Like I didn't shed a tear, but it was misty up in my eyes. And I was just like, so that was the reason. In my head, I was saying to myself, like, that's the reason why you didn't connect with me. But the whole time prior to this conversation, I didn't even understand that history that
Mm.
he had with his father. But after having that conversation, I was like, okay, it makes sense now. And I forgave him in that moment. And from that moment up until now, we've been having conversations um, and getting, more rapport with each other. Still not as close as I would want it, but we building.
I was going to ask you that too, and you said it. Were you able to forgive him? Because it sounds like that was obviously you said it that a part of your healing journey was that forgiveness.
It was.
So you got this self discovery journey that leads you to be strong enough, wise enough, bold enough to now be able to talk to your father
Yeah.
because it may have led to the conversation about him not being there for you emotionally, but it had to start with you being confident enough to go to him about the business conversation. Like, hey,
Right.
so now you got enough swag to be like, pops, this ain't gonna work.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then that leads into this conversation. Of course, your father cries and you get teary eyed, but essentially, y'all hash it out,
We did. We
and
did.
and then you forgive him
Yeah.
because it sounds like you do what I call what I love to call. I'm calling it. That's my new thing. I'm calling it curious conversation.
Curious conversation. I like that.
Right, where we go into the conversation without accusation, without judgment, and without assumption, and
Right.
we just allow ourselves to be curious about the whys and the whats,
Mhm.
the four W's, right? The
Right.
what, the who, the when, the where, and
Mhm.
not so much the why,
Right.
but the who, the what, the when, the where. Like what allowed you to do this? What was the curious conversation?
Hmm.
Though, what would you say on as it relates to this growth point for you?
Yeah.
Where you at with it now?
So right now, as far as my growth as a man, I feel good, man. I feel good about how I see myself, my self image. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone even more. I'm being even more direct, even more affirming myself,
Mm,
checking myself and my emotions when I'm having one of those days. I'm not running away from my own emotions, and even with my little sister, man, like even being vulnerable to her and showing her what it looks like for a man to be vulnerable. So even going through that process and building that connection with my little sister now because I feel even more confident as a man to really be in her life as a brother, as a husband. I'm really growing in those areas right there, learning each day and not running away from the work. Because that's the thing that the self discovery journey taught me was don't run away from the work that is necessary for you to go to the next level as a person, as a human being. Because the work is necessary for building your character, building integrity, all of that. You need to put in the work, to get better emotionally, to take care of your mental health, and just to show up the way that you need to show up and make an impact in your own internal life and to those that will put around you to watch over and to protect and to provide for. So
yeah. It's something to say too about not necessarily your story, but because kudos for you to be able to do it. But that moment of forgiving your father,
Yeah,
well, we don't realize that forgiveness ain't even really for them;
right. It's
be
for
for
us.
us.
Hmm.
So I'm sure that lifted the weight off of you too, because you was like, man, I ain't even gotta take this personal.
Right. Because I was prior to that, I was taking it personal. I was taking it real personal. Like I was telling you guys, anger. I was sad, and I was just really like, to be honest, I wanted to wring his neck because I'm like, yo, you left me out here abandoned. You left me out here like fending for myself as a man. But like you were saying, like once I made that decision, because it's a decision to want to forgive somebody. I made that decision because I didn't want to keep being miserable every time I saw him. I didn't want to keep being miserable every time I saw his name pop up on my cell phone at the time. I was tired of that. I was tired of like feeling awkward around him because I was having all these feelings. So diving into that forgiveness, it was everything that I needed to really feel at peace, moving
Gotcha.
forward.
Well, thank you for that, man. This has actually been a good talk.
Yeah,
You just talked about feeling that peace. That's a good transition points for us, man, to talk about your peace, power, and purpose.
yeah,
Um, I want to address one of the questions that came in on IG though, because I mean you can't see him, but the sister says, how do you feel your journey will empower you to show up for your son in ways that you weren't able to benefit from in your childhood?
for sure. That's a good question. So, like now, like with me and my son, like I'm showing him and teaching him that it's okay to express yourself.
Mm,
It's okay to express your emotion because he's 5, but he has that language of saying like, "Yo, Dad, I'm sad. I'm this. I'm that," and really stopping what I'm doing to actually ask him what's going on and really show him that I'm listening to him and I'm seeing him. So
mm,
like going on my journey and going on my journey with him as his father, I'm really teaching him what it means to. It's okay to express yourself. It's okay to you know see that I'm here for you and that I'm here to support you and that I want to teach him as well. Like it's okay to again express your emotions because when I was coming up, I didn't have those like outlets, especially like I said with my father. So I'm teaching him that I'm a safe space, that he can come to me, that we can have these conversations, that he can come alongside of me and ask me what's going on with me, and I can ask him what's going on with him, and we actually are learning each other. And that's the thing that I want to teach him is that it's okay to express your emotions. It's okay to even be curious about your dad and really tap into his life and vice versa, tapping into his life and really drawing a real emotional connection with him. Because I give him stuff. We go out, me and my wife, we buy him stuff. But I always remember that that emotional connection will outlive the stuff that I'm buying for him. And that emotional connection is going to shape his worldview internally and externally. So just me showing my presence in his life has been everything. It has been really like my main focus at this time is showing that I'm present, talking with him, communicating with him, and really getting in with him when he's expressing his feelings. So
good. Dope. Thank you for that, brother. And good question to the person in the room. Man, let's get to your three P's, man.
3 P's.
Answer them as with as authentically as you can, right?
Sure.
Whatever comes to the mind first. When do you feel most peaceful?
I feel most peaceful late at night when I'm just reading my Bible, man, reading the Word. That's when I feel most peaceful. It's when I'm in the Word, God's Word, at night.
Gotcha. When do you feel most purposeful?
I feel most purposeful, to be honest with y'all, when I'm working in my therapy practice, when I'm working with men who's been rejected and I understand their story and I'm able to help them to overcome, rejected thoughts and feelings and helping them to, show up the way they need to show up. That's when I feel most purposeful.
Thank you for that. And when do you feel most powerful?
I feel most powerful, man, when I'm playing with my son, man. Like when we wrestling and showing off my strength, I'm picking him up, throwing him around. That's when I feel most powerful because he was like, "Yo, Dad, you got all the muscles. You like the Incredible Hulk. You like Spider Man." And I'd be like flexing my muscles and showing him like, "Yeah, I'm powerful. I'm strong." So really being able to show him that I'm strong when I'm playing with him, that's when I feel most powerful,
That's
and
dope.
when I feel most loved as well. You know what I mean?
That's dope. And you know why, right?
Because he see me as the strength.
What is dope about it is that it's your love language occurring again
Mm-hmm.
in real time as an adult.
Mm.
Because you said what you needed from your father was affirmation.
Yes, sir.
And now you're saying you feel most powerful when your son affirms you.
Mm. Wow. Thank you for helping me make that that connection, brother. Wow, that's dope. That's dope. I
Thank
never knew that connection until you pointed it out.
I mean, yes, that was a conversation.
Mhm.
But sounds like it was just attached to what you needed to receive love.
Mhm.
So we can use the word affirmation, but it sounds like because you said my son's like, yeah, Dad, you got all these muscles, and then you said, and it makes me feel love too.
Mhm.
But in this case, it sounds like the affirmations were your love
Yeah, absolutely. Words of affirmation. Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
Man, we appreciate you. Listen, for those who are tapped in, this is the Heal Me Campaign Brotherly Conversations, where nightly for the month of May, I talk with brothers about how they faced pain and difficulty in life and essentially been able to come through. Like I said, we started this in 2019 based off a song called Heal Me featuring Grammy nominated artist Raheem Devon, which talks about how my father taught me some inadvertently unhealthy ways to cope. Uh, we will continue to have these conversations because our goal is to help other Black men who are dealing with difficulties know that they can make it out, know that they are not alone, and then employ some of these strategies like reading your word and affirming yourself and journaling. And so we thank our guest today, Dana Lewis, for tapping in and sharing his story with us and allowing us to benefit from, what he was able to do to help himself. I think this self-discovery journey that you went on um, is important. And I know that you're doing good work with men because you could clearly communicate to us how you process your own healing. I know that you're helping others process theirs. Thank you, brother, for your time.
Thank you for creating this space, man. This platform right here. I salute you as well.
Yeah, blessings, King.
Bless.